Steel and Shadows, Chapter 2. Finding a place to stay in Ironspire was harder than Davin or Lira had anticipated. They spent hours walking through the lower districts, trying to negotiate with landlords who took one look at their dusty clothes and out-of-place expressions and shook their heads. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the crowded streets, they found themselves at a dingy bar tucked into a corner of an industrial district. The neon sign above flickered, barely legible, and the clientele inside looked rough, even for Ironspire. The rusted wrench wasn't much to look at. Tucked into the corner of a massive mecha bay, the bar was little more than a patchwork of rusted metal panels and scrap parts, its flickering neon sign barely hanging on by a thread. The place had earned its name for good reason. Everything within it was grimy, from the sticky floors to the grease-covered bar stools. But for anyone who worked with mechas in Ironspire, it was a second home. Davin and Lira Kline stood at the entrance, taking it all in. Around them, massive industrial mechas loomed overhead, their towering forms barely fitting into the cavernous bay. The mecha bay itself was a sprawling, chaotic mess, dozens of rigs in various states of repair or disrepair, pilots and mechanics milling about, trading parts and haggling over prices. The air was thick with the smell of coolant, engine oil, and sweat, mingling with the distant hum of welding torches and clanging metal. "This place is a wreck," Lira muttered, her eyes darting around the bay. "Yeah, but it's a wreck with potential," Davin replied, unable to hide his excitement. The rusted wrench sat at the edge of the chaos like a fortress built from scrap metal. Mechanics and pilots alike filtered in and out, some dragging parts or tools, others looking more worn out from too many drinks than too much work. Inside, the bar was a hazy blur of dim lights and loud voices. But more importantly, it was alive with the heartbeat of Ironspire's underground mecha scene. Lira wrinkled her nose. "Doesn't exactly scream professional, does it?" Davin gave her a playful nudge. "Come on, this is perfect. You want fancy, you go to those corporate shops. But this is where the real work happens." The bar had a reputation, one of grime, sweat, and broken dreams. But for those who couldn't afford the pristine workshops in Ironspire's upper districts, it was the place to get work done, to swap parts, to find someone willing to tackle a problem the bigger shops wouldn't touch. It was where freelancers and renegades gathered, where pilots in need of a quick fix met mechanics with grease under their nails and sparks in their eyes. Inside, the scene was just as chaotic. Mechanics crowded around tables, their grimy hands holding engine parts, circuit boards, and tools, all while tossing back drinks and swapping stories about jobs they'd worked or battles they'd seen. Pilots were scattered around them, talking in low tones as they tried to find someone who could get their rigs up and running. The bar itself, a long slab of scrap metal topped with dented stools, was manned by a hulking figure with a mechanical arm who poured drinks with the same precision a tech might use on a delicate engine. Lira gave the place a once-over and shook her head. "I can practically smell the credits flying out of our pockets." Davin laughed, pulling their duffel bag closer. "Relax, we're not here to spend. We're here to make." They weaved through the crowd, dodging a mechanic in overalls who was waving a plasma cutter dangerously close to another pilot's head, and found themselves at the bar. The bartender, his mechanical arm whirring softly as he wiped down a glass, glanced up as they approached. "What'll it be?" he rumbled, his voice deep enough to cut through the noise of the room. Lira shot a glance at Davin, her brow furrowing. "We're not here for drinks. Heard this is the place to find work." The bartender gave him a long, hard look, his sharp eyes taking in their dusty clothes and out-of-place expressions. He snorted. "Work? You do look fresh out of the cargo hold. What are you looking for?" Lira straightened, putting on her best, confident face. "I'm a mechanic. He's a pilot. We're looking to get our hands dirty." The bartender chuckled, a low, gravelly sound. "Well, you're in the right place for dirty, that's for sure." He pointed a grease-stained finger towards a cluster of mechanics huddled around a table in the corner. "That's Jarl's crew. If you want work, you'll want to talk to them." Davin gave the bartender a nod. "Thanks." As they made their way towards the table, Davin couldn't help but take in more of the bar's atmosphere. It was different from anything he'd ever experienced back on Tassara Prime. The place was alive with the hum of conversation, the clinking of glasses, and the constant buzz of machinery. Mechanics sat together in clusters, debating over the best ways to repair malfunctioning systems or swap out parts, while pilots bargained with them for services. At one table, a pilot was gesturing wildly at a mechanic about his mecha's faulty core reactor, while the mechanic, unimpressed, casually wiped engine grease off his hands before making an offer. "This place, it's like a swap meet for mecha," Davin said under his breath. "Everyone here is looking for a deal." "Yeah, and it looks like most of them are desperate," Lira added. "This is where you come when you can't afford anything better." It was true. Most of the pilots here didn't have the gleaming mechas of the arena champions, or the high-end models of the corporate-backed mercenaries used. These were rust bucket rigs, patched together with whatever parts could be salvaged or bought for cheap. But there was something gritty and real about it. It wasn't glamorous, but it was Ironspire. When they reached Jarl's crew, Lira took the lead, her voice steady and sure. "I hear you're looking for mechanics." The man, who had been pointed out as Jarl, an older mechanic with a grizzled beard and oil-stained hands, looked up from the engine part he was tinkering with. He eyed Lira and Davin with the same wary suspicion the bartender had shown. "Who told you that?" Jarl asked, his voice rough and tired. "The bartender," Lira said. "I'm a mechanic. My brother's a pilot. We're new here, looking for work." Jarl looked them up and down, then turned back to his engine part. "New? Huh? Well, yeah. You ever work on a real rig, or just those industrial haulers out in the colonies?" Lyra's jaw tightened, but she kept her cool. "I worked on mining mechas back on Tassara Prime. Heavy-duty machines, the kind that don't get a break and need to be repaired on the fly. If I can keep those beasts running, I can handle whatever you've got." Jarl snorted, clearly unimpressed. "Mining rigs, huh? You're the big leagues now, kid. Combat mechas aren't the same as haulers. You screw up here and someone dies." Lira didn't flinch. "Let me prove it to you." Jarl gave him a long, hard stare, then glanced over at the massive combat mech on the far corner of the bay. Its leg was torn apart, hydraulic lines hanging loose, and the casing on its reactor core was cracked. "You fix that," he said, nodding towards the machine. "Get it running, and maybe I'll think about giving you work." Lyra's eyes followed Jarl's gaze, and for a moment, her confidence wavered. The mech was in rough shape, far worse than anything she'd worked on before, but she nodded, determined. "Deal." She slung her tool belt around her waist and marched towards the mecha, her eyes narrowing with focus. Davin followed close behind, watching as his sister inspected the damage. "You got this?" he asked, though he already knew the answer. Lira flashed him a confident smile. "I've got this." With a quick glance at the damage, she dropped to her knees and started working, pulling tools from her belt with practiced precision. Davin watched as she moved, her hands steady and sure despite the complexity of the task. The other mechanics watched too, some with curiosity, others with skepticism. The work was slow but steady. Lira disconnected the hydraulic lines, patched up the reactor casing, and rewired a mess of circuits that had shorted out during the rig's last battle. She worked in silence, her focus unbreakable, even as the sounds of the bar and mecha bay echoed around her. After what felt like an eternity, Lira stood up, wiping grease from her hands. She gestured to the cockpit. "Try it now." Jarl raised an eyebrow, then nodded to one of his pilots. The men climbed into the cockpit and powered up the mecha. The engine hummed to life, the lights flickered on, and the rig's damaged leg moved smoothly for the first time in days. The pilot ran the machine through a series of motions, testing its mobility. Finally, he powered it down and gave Jarl a thumbs up. Jarl grunted, impressed despite himself. He turned back to Lira, his grizzled face cracking a rare smile. "Not bad, kid. Not bad at all." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small data chip. "You've got a job. Show this to the foreman tomorrow and he'll set you up." "You," he said, turning to Davin, "if your sister's half as good at fixing rigs as you are at flying them, we might find you something too." Davin grinned. "Thanks." Lira pocketed the chip, a satisfied look on her face. As they turned to leave, Jarl called after them. "Welcome. Welcome to Ironspire." As they stepped back out into the sprawling mecha bay, Davin glanced at his sister. "You sure know how to make an impression." Lira shrugged, a small smile playing on her lips. "Well, someone had to." Davin laughed, slinging the duffel bag over his shoulder. Well, here's to getting our hands dirty. Let's hope we can survive this place. Lyra shot him a sideways glance. Survive? We didn't come here to survive, Dav. We came here to win.